Hello, my name is Chitta. I am one of Bante's students, and we decided to try and help Bante because he doesn't live at a fixed monastery. Wherever he goes becomes a monastery, and therefore he doesn't have a fixed donation box where people can make offerings. So we've added a link below that you can make a donation to help protect the sasana and help support this wonderful monk if you feel that way inclined. Thank you. Be well.
Today we continue in our Sutta exploration series, and it's a special Sutta today with a theme that might interest listeners, viewers. It's on the kitchen chef, the cook, if you will. It's interesting how Lord Buddha would use so many different real-life examples in his superlative use of similes and metaphors and analogies. And there's a phrase that you see it throughout several hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of suttas, and that is where either it's Lord Buddha or one of his Arya Savakas, his noble disciples, that say, especially in the context of explaining and clarifying some point, or even debating with someone who came to debate with them, that is, where the term is, I will give you a simile for some intelligent people gather the point, grasp the whole point of what I'm trying to say here, the meaning of what is being expressed through the use of similes. So more than any tradition out there, you see this in Buddhism, you see this in the Dhamma. And many of the things that stories or even fables that came about in human history, we see their beginnings here. Things that we don't even know the connection, or we didn't know that per se it might have had a Buddhist origin to it. It is I can't count how many times I've come across suttas where I'm reading it or translating it, and then I see, oh, so this is where it's from. Oh, okay. Things like, 1001 Arabian Nights and other fables, Western or from the East. It's amazing how expertly these similes have been used in order for them to deliver often similar or even the same message in a way that can land, because there are different learners, different learning types, styles of learning or understanding or grasping mentally, intellectually. So to speak about things in an abstract fashion, conceptually, is one thing. But when you add visuals, when you add especially things that people can take it in and drop into something even more visceral. I was demonstrating a point the other day with someone, and I said, I'm going to give you a series of words, and you're going to tell me what's happening to your body. And he said, yes, sure, go ahead. And I said, lemon. A lemon that is cut in half. Lemon that is squeezed. The weather is hot outside. What is happening to your body, even now as you're hearing me say these words? Already the tongue, the mouth starts watering. The sour, even though there is nothing resembling lemon nearby, the images that we have are powerful. So this is another way of seeing the value of the using of metaphors and similes. They're very powerful, especially to a meditating mind. That's why it's so crucial for us to, before a Dhamma talk, before you listen at home to a Dhamma discourse, just sit for a little bit, at least, to prepare yourself. So here we're going to encounter a simile, as I mentioned, and there's a point that Lord Buddha always makes, and sometimes it is in the form of a drill, as in a repetition module, a method where, a format where you keep hearing the same thing, and the modern mind does not necessarily like that with our hyper agitated states of mind, where we want something quick and we want to get to the nuts and bolts of it, as it were, to the main crux of it, to the main, thing that it has. But we forget, in that case, we forget the value of the temporal aspects, specifically the time factor that is necessary for the mind to really absorb something and then to even respond properly. Briefly, when I was guiding you earlier in the meditation, I mentioned something as to do with the development of wisdom happens when the mind learns how to go deeper and deeper into states of relaxation, specifically equanimity. When it hits rock bottom of that safety, the Titanic has landed, as it were, at the bottom of the ocean. When you're there, there's stillness. Now, that comes through development. And it also causes the development of wisdom. So from both aspects, there is cultivation taking place. And what this requires us to do is to develop the habit of consistency. Anything, any craft you can think of, any type of work you can think of, including writing a letter, it requires a certain drill. I still remember in my mind how my teachers used to have us do the whole class, the repeating of A, B, and same thing with words. Eventually, those turned into sentences. Short, brief, but sentences nonetheless. Eventually, they turned into paragraphs. Similarly with, even if you're a carpenter or trying to hammer a nail into a plank of wood or the wall, you need to know, you need to basically at one point or another hit the hammer until you get the right coordination, hand-eye coordination. You're going to hit some, sometimes you're going to hit your thumb, your fingers. Until you learn the alignment, that requires consistency. Something that modern human beings, we don't like to hear, we don't like to do, we don't like to engage in. But there's a power that this has, and this is one of the reasons why we are not developing as we were in intelligence, in knowledge even, and definitely not developing in wisdom, so long as these methods of repetition are not being truly appreciated and pursued. So the consistency is key, whether it is your sittings, but especially whenever you're bringing your sati back into the picture, into the scene, into whatever it is that you're doing. Instead of having sati be like that book that you like to read sometimes, but it's there under the clutter of other books, under the bills, under the other things, maybe under the bed. And every so often you go, yeah, that'll be nice for me to read a section from that book. So you pull it out from under the dust and that's not sati. That's not how we practice mindfulness. That's not how we develop wisdom, because wisdom is not going to develop without sati, without applying awareness, attention. Where is it being placed? So there is a power to the repetition. This is a law. This is a rule that Lord Buddha applies again and again. This is called training. This is why we have the term sikkhapadang, the path of training. And it's not just for bhikkhus. The moment a person says, I'm going to start this path, then the teacher will urge the student to think very seriously about taking the 5 precepts, taking refuge. And that is training. So you as a layperson, male or female, you are actually practicing. If you're holding on, if you're using and applying consistently the repetition of bringing into mind the 5 precepts. That's also training. It's like martial arts. If you want to learn how to kick, you need to kick thousands and thousands of times to know what needs to be done, how the body needs to be holding still, how it needs to be firmly established, anchored, and then you can do whatever with the other leg, let's say. Doing maneuvers, building a structure. It's all the result of repetition. And that's how we can actually maintain the structure of your path, the structure of your work, the structure of your spiritual training, and the structure of how is it that am I progressing or not on this path? So how do you gauge? One of the quickest ways to do that is to look back. Where were you a year ago in your practice? Or a month ago? Or 10 years ago? If you've been consistently applying the principles, then you have been developing. So you look back. And ask the question, if I were to be placed in the same circumstance, in the same type of situations, will my responses be different than they were then? Will I make the same choices? And already you will get the answer pretty quickly if you've been developing wisdom. Because sometimes I notice we really go, very heavy on ourselves. We're very heavy-handed with ourselves vis-a-vis the progress that we expect for us to be making. Come on, I need to be, far ahead. Meanwhile, you are. So these things you need to bring into mind, especially when we're going to go over the Satipatthana today and the mindfulness, and see, even though you might have come across the Satipatthana formula several times, but again, you can imagine how many times Lord Buddha had to say it to listeners. So he had to find different ways of saying it and delivering it. And the person might have heard it so many times, but the way he delivered it this time, and the mind being ready and having practice with consistency, all of these elements come together. So without further ado, let's start the sutta. It is, as I mentioned, from the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses. And it is the Sutta number 47.8. It's the Sūda Sutta, which means the kitchen chef, the cook. So I translated as simile of the kitchen chef. And again, it's in Samyutta Nikaya, so it is from the connections, sub-connected discourses dealing with the great section, as it were. And from there, you get the subsection, which is the Satipatthana Samyutta. Discourses linked up, connected to the theme of the basis of mindfulness practice. And the heading underneath that, it is the group of discourses that have to do with Ambapali, the courtesan Ambapali. And she was, as I mentioned several times in previous discourses, she was the very known, well-known courtesan of her day in India, especially in the Vajji kingdom, where we had the Vesali princes. So she was known there, and she was a big supporter of the Dhamma. But she really developed in her practice, and that changed her life, as you can imagine. And she maintained the practice until the end of her life. She stopped being a courtesan, by the way, in case you're wondering. So, so it's Sutta number SN 47.8, Sūda Sutta. Let's begin. Bhikkhus, imagine there was a rather talentless kitchen chef who, while being incompetent, unintuitive, unskilled, and stupid, decided to prepare a meal for the king or his royal minister by cooking a spread of a variety of curries. In Asia, curry is very important. And you have the base, which is the rice. And depending on which area in Southeast Asia, let's say, or South Asia or East Asia, rice can be prepared in different ways, but you can tell the textures. But the thing that really sets them apart from each other, one meal from another, is the flavors that they put inside these different curries. So it might just be rice and curry, but there could be a whole slew, hundreds of different dishes of curries, tasting totally different from each other. So, and the king's table would be covered with these. So here we have a chef who is absolutely talentless and stupid. Lord Buddha uses that word a lot, to the shock of many 21st century, individuals who don't like, very, very, what was it, politically correct. Lord Buddha didn't care for any of that. He was all about reality and the truth of what's happening. So he didn't sugarcoat anything. Okay, so let's go. However, so the chef, even though he's not a chef, but he's somehow, somebody placed him there in that position, and he decides to make a spread, a dinner table for the king. However, due to his lack of knowledge and understanding of flavors, all his dishes were terribly prepared, as they were excessive in the quantity of spices and seasonings. Being unbalanced in their flavor, they came out heavy in their sour taste, their bitterness, their spicy and pungent flavor, their sweet or salty taste, and were thus utterly unappetizing, let alone palatable, and in the case of some dishes, completely tasteless and bland. So you can imagine what the king must have experienced. So he's demonstrating you can see probably in his body language, the disgusting look on his face, the gestures, looking over to his queen, the other ministers, if he's hosting dinner with another royal, visiting them, the embarrassment he must be experiencing, or even if he's eating by himself, he's not having fun. Now, that talentless kitchen chef, being incompetent, unintuitive, unskilled, and stupid, is too self-absorbed to even look at the king's behavior at the table. Nor is he curious about the king's expressions while eating, not getting the hint from his body language while he sits there tasting the dishes he had prepared, the king tasting his dishes. Thus, he does not try to observe nor see as to which curry dish the king reached for more, or did not care much about, and those he totally avoided. Thus, he remains clueless as to which dish received praises, if any, and which ones did not, as he is unconcerned to even consider, today, this curry dish was pleasing to my master, or he reached for this one, or kept reaching for that one over there, or he kept complimenting me on this dish here, or the sour curry pleased my master today, or he reached for the spicy dishes more, or he took a lot of the sweet tasting one, or he spoke in praise of the bitter one, or the bland curry, or the pungent curry, or the sweet curry, or the salty curry, or the mild curry, or the bitter curry. Or I see my master is more pleased with these kinds of sauces and curries more than the others. And because of his lack in concern and inattention, that talentless, intuitive, unskilled, incompetent, and stupid kitchen chef does not obtain any special gifts from his master, be it gifts of money, clothing, promotions, or any kind of perks and bonuses from the court. Well, let me just continue here and then I'll comment. And what is the reason for this? It is because that talentless, unintuitive, unskilled, incompetent, and stupid kitchen chef is uninterested to even look at the behavior of his master or his body language. Thus, he has no clue as to what is taking place, nor does he get the hint. So you have, the adjectives have said already what we need to know about this particular kitchen chef. However, he, on top of that, the lack in skill and talent and the fact that he can't cook, basically, he's too self-absorbed to consider what's happening around him as a result of his incompetence. Because he could still improve upon himself and his situation by looking, which is not doing. So there's a reason here Lord Buddha's using the example of a chef, because he was a royal, so he knew the kind of work it would go into preparing a meal and how it can ruin a person's life. The chef might actually get, in some cases, if you have a very surly or cantankerous or very moody ruler, that might be the end of your life, let alone your position in the court. Or it might completely change your life and your children's and grandchildren's lives. So if he had just a little bit sati, if he had just a little bit more concern about how are these people taking the food that I prepared, but more juiciness is actually further down. In just the same manner, bhikkhus, the incompetent, unintuitive, unskilled, and stupid bhikkhu, in trying to meditate by being attentive and aware of the body, attempts to stay with it while observing whatever he detects as the most pronounced bodily sensation occurring at the time. He does so, but without any thoughts or attitudes of either longing or resentment towards the world. However, as he does so, he is easily distracted, for he is not driven. Hence, he is unable to enter into samadhi. He does not even come close to eradicating the defilements that corrupt the heart. This because he is uninterested to even look at the behavior of his mind. Thus, he has no clue as to what is taking place, nor does he get the hint. This path I was mentioning earlier when we say sikkhapadang, this path of training, or patipada, is all about being present to what is taking place. There's a term that you've heard me use a lot that is mentioned countless times in the suttas, in the Pali suttas, and that is yatha bhutang. Bhuta means to come into being. Yatha means this way, or thus. That thus comes into being, that is taking place, that is happening right now, as it is happening. So yatha bhutang, that means the person must be present to see it. If you're not, then you're going to miss the sunset. You're looking over your shoulder somewhere else, and then the person says, did you see the sunset? Where? Oh, I was looking, but yeah, but when you were looking at that moment when it was setting, you looked somewhere else. You missed it. Many people come to this path of practice hoping to get into a trance. Many people promoting jhanas in the past 10, 20 years. Initially, they sound like they're practicing correctly, but sooner or later you see how it kind of veers towards it going into a state of mind that sounds like a trance. In fact, it is a trance because the person is experiencing something sublime, blissed out. That's why these individuals sooner or later would want to get into some type of a psychedelic, taking psychedelic substances, because they're tired of that. So a jhana ends up being a gateway drug for these people, not a way to awaken. What is required for awakening is what I was mentioning again and again and again, that Lord Buddha repeats as being at the crux of this path, and that is wisdom must be developed, consciousness must be understood. You cannot develop wisdom without being present. So this here we have a bhikkhu trying to meditate to get into some state. Maybe he's running away from being agitated. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, nobody wants to be agitated. But what is the understanding? There's a lack in understanding here in the bhikkhu, because he's dropping the ball. He's dropping it very quickly, the method. Even though he's practicing technically the structure of the satipatthana, but he's easily distracted, and he's not following the steps correctly vis-a-vis applying wisdom and sati. That's why it's called satipatthana, the base, foundation of practicing mindfulness. And that's why he doesn't even get the hint, Lord Buddha says. That's the key term that you're going to see here. Just like that kitchen chef was not getting the hint that that food is deplorable. You shouldn't even feed this to an animal, a wild beast in the jungle. They won't even touch it. Also, such a bhikkhu, in trying to meditate by being fully attentive and aware of feelings. So it was the body. So now we get into the feelings, right? It's called the chatu, the four basis of mindfulness practice. So first we have kaya, then we have vedana. So Lord Buddha is saying, even though he's being fully attentive at one point or another, aware of feelings, attempts to stay with them while observing whatever he detects as the most pronounced feeling that is occurring at the time. So he's noticing the feeling that's the loudest. He does so, but without having any thoughts or attitudes of either longing or resentment towards the world, which is the right formula. So far, so good. Because you don't need to have, you shouldn't have this fighting going on with something that happened outside, maybe a noise, or maybe something you brought with you to the sit. Some injustice is happening in the world, and you want to get rid of that. That is being resentful towards the world. That's going to sabotage your practice of satipatthana. Similarly, you cannot bring in anything with you that is the opposite, meaning coveting something that has to do with the world. Whether you heard some other person was attaining some jhanic level, or somebody looked at you in a very heartwarming way and you brought it with you and you're still dwelling on that, you are not present to the satipatthana. You're somewhere else in either case. And Lord Buddha says, however, as he does so, he is easily distracted, for he is not driven. Hence, he is unable to enter into samadhi. Therefore, he does not even come close to eradicating the defilements that corrupt the heart. This because he is uninterested to even look at the behavior of his mind. Thus, he has no clue as to what is taking place, nor does he get the hint. Behavior of the mind. Remember, in this path, in this Dhamma and discipline, we call Lord Buddha's teaching, Buddhism, the Dhamma. There's three types of actions. It's not just the physical action or even the communication, speech, but the mind. The behavior is so important. What many of us do is we see a behavior that we don't like about the mind. Maybe you got jealous looking at someone having something you didn't have. What do? We quickly try to put a lid on it. That is not addressing it. Because it will, now you're practicing, what Lord Buddha as Bodhisattva Siddhartha was practicing. Suppression, 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 suppression. That's not going to give you any sati. That is practicing austerities, in a sense, the way the sadhus would practice or still do. That's the opposite of intoxication. That's the opposite of splurging or just doing anything that comes to your whims, about giving yourself pleasures and this and that. That's the other extreme, which Siddhartha Gautama ran away from. So even though for all intents and purposes, you would convince yourself that you're sitting to do the satipatthana, meanwhile, none of that is taking place. You might even be checking the boxes. Yes, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, but you're easily distractible. Why? You're not invested enough. You're not attentive enough to seeing, okay, what is happening here? Every meditator owes it to themselves to ask the question, what's holding me back? It's completely, perfectly legitimate to ask yourself, not in a critical way necessarily, but just to ask yourself, even while you're sitting, when you become aware that you're not going deeper, what am I doing wrong? Without judgment, looking at it and say, what could be holding me back? And drop it. This is when you're applying the Four Noble Truths, by the way. It's painful when you try to get into samadhi and you can't, and you're there and you've dedicated this chunk of time to go deep, but somehow you're not going deep. And this happens to everyone. Definitely happened to Lord Buddha and the Arya Savakas. Of course, we know this. But how am I addressing this? So the wrong way of doing this, it would be to completely put a lid on it and saying, no, I'm developing. In fact, I'm going to go to the other jhana. I'm going to go into this. You missed it. Or I'm going to turn on this Dhamma talk or this music or something that I'm just going to chill, I'm going to relax and go deeper with that into samadhi. You're missing the whole point of satipatthana there, Lord Buddha says. Also, such a bhikkhu in trying to meditate by being fully attentive and aware of states that are occurring in the heart, citta. This is cittanupassana, by the way. Sometimes translated as emotions, sometimes translated as just the mind. Attempts, chitta has different meanings depending on the context, of course, like most of the Pali terms that Lord Buddha used. So states that are occurring in the heart, that's how I translated it, attempts to stay with them while observing whatever he detects as the most pronounced state that is occurring within the chitta at that time. He does this, but without having any thoughts or attitudes of either longing or resentment towards the world. Thus far, the Satipatthana formula is perfect. This person is whatever they are doing. Lord Buddha is saying they're doing everything right to this point. But the mind is so, well, it is the mind. It does its thing because of countless eons of living in samsara. Even the best tool, if you misuse it, or you use it for something that it's not meant for, you're going to think that that's what it's for because you've never applied it the correct way. So when you are practicing the correct way, it will feel strange at first. But if you do not practice a resolved attitude, intentional, persistent attitude to maintain your course and saying what's going on in the presence of sati and sampajanya, mindfulness and full awareness, then you're going to drift back to however that tool was being used. In this case, I'm using the term tool for the mind. However, as he does so, he is easily distracted, for he is not driven. Hence, he is unable to enter into samadhi. Driven. Why driven? Because we must have a compelling reason to want to meditate. We must have a compelling reason to do whatever it is that we want to do. The sad thing is, with today's world, human beings, we've lost our compelling reasons. That's why you see so many people playing video games. There's no reason for that. It's an aimless lifestyle. Or watching sports. Or watching people talking about the game that was being played and listening to their commentaries. Absolutely aimless existence. Sampapalapa. It's like Lord Buddha says, in regards to speech. Chatter. Pointless, meaningless, absolutely nonsensical. Waste of time. The person is not driven. You're just loitering around in samsara. Oh, so what? It's not just another life. So let me just extract as much pleasure out of it as I can, possibly. And then your head drops forward and you're dead, gone. There goes another life. Even though you might have been a bhikkhu at the time of Lord Buddha, doing supposedly the satipatthana, and still not be driven. Imagine that. All these points, all these elements are there. It's so important to have a reason, to be driven by something compelling. That's why we have other similes as well, such as the man whose hair is on fire, whose beard is on fire, the person whose clothing and her hair is on fire. Does the person have the luxury of delaying anything at that juncture? Can they postpone the extinguishing of the fire? This is something that brings up samvega in the meditator, but a meditator who is present with sati to see what's going on. Am I telling myself stories? Am I still dancing on my laurels, as it were, just enjoying past experiences, yes, that was 1977 when I attained to that level of peace. Oh, how beautiful it was. Yeah, but today is 2024. An age has passed. And how far have I come from that point? So, and is there suffering still? That is the urgency bit. Am I suffering? Anything less than freedom from suffering, it means we're doing something wrong. And that's what Lord Buddha is saying. Therefore, he does not even come close to eradicating the defilements that corrupt the heart. That is the only way that you can attain peace, freedom from suffering. That's what Nibbana is, freedom from suffering, freedom from constructing, freedom from fabricating, freedom from building something so that you end up feeling good about it, having done it. So it's very much based on a product versus a state of being where there is no pain anymore. There is no suffering. You're free. Lord Buddha says, a person, a bhikkhu who has reached that point, there's nothing left for them to do. There's suttas where people come and ask Lord Buddha, well, would there still be some work to do because the person is still alive? The first few years of, or even months of the sasana, you had over 1,250 arahants sitting there around Lord Buddha. Arahants, fully awakened. Imagine us stepping into that sangha. 1,250 plus Lord Buddha. Human arahants. Because there were other beings as well who were arahants, devas and things, and beings. But imagine, these people are done. So it's not like a endless hamster wheel that we're going to keep running through. No, there's a purpose. There is a graduation date, as I heard once a person say, a graduation date for this path of practice. So it's not like any other religion out there where it's constantly, it's an open, it's up to, we don't know, basically. Guesswork. No, there's a period at the end of your journey. And no, it doesn't happen. The period doesn't come post-death. That freedom is to be experienced here in this life. Diteva dhamme, Lord Buddha says, in this very birth, in this body that you're occupying. Before you die, you close your eyes for the last time. This is a path that delivers freedom from such suffering in this life. But the person has to first start looking at where the problem lies. What is the behavior of the mind, Lord Buddha is saying? He's missing out. Thus, he has no clue as to what is taking place, nor does he get the hint. The hint is not necessarily going to come from the king in this case, the chef, the kitchen chef. That's a metaphor for someone outside. But here, you are with yourself. You are occupying your own body, your own skin. You must be aware of what's happening inside of you and stop telling lies to you as to where you are. If you are unhappy, that needs to be addressed, Lord Buddha is saying. If your mind is distracted, you need to understand that, yes, my mind is distracted. That's good. You know now. So you have a starting point. You have a baseline. You can work with that. What I notice is happening a lot is that individuals who are not developing, they're off, in fact, off the path. but they keep telling themselves stories. They keep reading books. They keep writing books on the Dhamma. And they keep trying or practicing techniques, convincing themselves that they must have developed, especially if they have a surrounding, community around them. The bigger, that must mean that they are even more evolved and developed. No, this requires truth and honesty from each and every one of us. To sit and say, am I really more aware in my sati? Am I practicing yoniso manasikara? That is the key. If there is yoniso manasikara missing from your life, meaning there's no yoniso manasikara, you're off the trail. You're gone. You're doing something else. And the mind is so skilled at lying, at deceiving us, because that's why Mara loves to use tactics and tricks. And the mind that is not able to practice yoniso manasikara, radical, wise, attention, radical because it goes to the roots. If it's unable to do that or maintain that, and the best way to do that, to maintain yoniso manasikara, is through the application and consistent maintenance of sati, until it reaches a point where it is with you all the time. That's why the Arahant, doesn't make those stupid mistakes they did. Also, such a bhikkhu, in trying to meditate by being fully attentive and aware of whatever mental objects he witnesses, this is Dhammanupassana. Now, this is the fourth aspect of the Satipatthana. Attempts to stay with them while observing whatever he detects as the most pronounced mental phenomena or object occurring at the time. He does this, but without having any thoughts or attitudes of either longing or resentment towards the world. Okay, here's the problem. However, as he does so, he is easily distracted, for he is not driven. Hence, he is unable to enter into samadhi. See how much emphasis Lord Buddha is placing on samadhi. People have asked, people have made conjectures, people have reached conclusions saying that samadhi is absolutely unnecessary to attain. They're missing something in that conclusion of theirs. Because samadhi doesn't necessarily mean attaining to a jhana. Okay, so we need to look at the usage of the term samadhi, which is a term that Lord Buddha introduced to the world. It's not necessarily just concentration. It has within it the collectedness, the stable, serene collectedness of the mind or the heart. You can also, I also translate it as that sometimes, where everything comes into this point, but there's a fullness around it. So you're aware fully. It's not just laser-like sharp, absorbed at the exclusion of everything else type of a state for the mind to be in. But samadhi, nevertheless, when you are listening to a Dhamma talk, when you are really listening to a sutta, your mind can drop into samadhi. Every single one of the individuals who attain to any of the paths and fruits attain to samadhi, including the countless beings, people and other beings who came to listen to Lord Buddha give a Dhamma discourse. That's why it was absolutely essential for nobody to make a sound. If you coughed, the people around you would look at you after the second cough or third cough. Okay, take it easy. Just go outside. Leave us alone. because you're messing up the whole atmosphere. But for somebody who's gone deep into samadhi, it really doesn't matter. Whether it's Suppa Buddha, whether it's Patachara, whether it's Anathapindika, whether it was King Suddhodana listening to his son, Lord Buddha, return and give a discourse, talk, just, it's mesmerizing. It's like a black hole that pulls you in. It's living Dhamma. But the person has to allow, be driven enough to allow oneself to be that present. And that's another term for samadhi you can think of, a definition, to be fully present. You're absolutely, you are the embodiment of sati there, and sampajanya. That's why the Dhamma is revealed in the heart. That's why it happens. To this day, listening to a Dhamma discourse can allow a human mind or any other able mind to attain the paths and fruits. And no, it's not just Sotapatti. You can have all the way to Arahantship. Remember Bahya Daruchirya? He didn't say, okay, Bhante, to Lord Buddha after he received that very short dispensation, the instruction, and he said, let me go and sit under a tree so that I can actually absorb what you gave me and practice. No, he listened to Lord Buddha tell him, Ditthe ditthamatang bhavissati, sute sutamattang bhavissati, mute mutamattang bhavissati, vinyate vinyatamattang bhavissati. When seeing, just see. When hearing, there is just hearing. When there's sensing, there's just sensing, whether it's the nose, whether it's the tongue, whether it's the body, you're just sensing. No object, subject relationship. Me and you over there, that thing over, none. When knowing something, cognizing something, there's just the cognizing. You see, it's just a mental object that showed up out of the blue. I don't have to give it an extra shadow. I don't have to flesh it out. I don't have to give it a personality. I don't need to have a point, a contrapoint. I don't have to have a position, a stance against it, in regards to it, in reference to it, vis-a-vis to it. None of that. It's just an object that came into mind and it's gone. You just saw it. Instead of using those, the example of sticky fingers, you get glued to these things, the sensations. This is staying with whatever's happening. This is satipatthana. And in the case of the Dhammanupassana, you're seeing the hindrances. So many places in the Pali Nikayas you see where Lord Buddha says, such a bhikkhu is able to see a mind that is dull or experiencing sleepiness, drowsiness, procrastination, torpor, as a mind that is experiencing procrastination, torpor. There is sloth in the mind. Or restless. Oh, it could be you. While you're sitting, there's nothing wrong, Lord Buddha is saying, to see the mind is distracted. In fact, to see that indicates that you are present. You are holding the hand of sati tightly. You're there. You're not going to let it slip, even though it's not a deep samadhi, or it's not even a samadhi because the mind is too agitated. You must see where you are, what the mind is doing. That is crucial. That's how you're going to get the hint, unlike that stupid chef or that stupid bhikkhu, Lord Buddha says. You're seeing it without sugarcoating anything. In this manner, that incompetent, unintuitive, unskilled, and stupid bhikkhu is then not able to, here in this very life, the Teva Dhamme I was mentioning, enter into nor dwell in happy and soothing states of being, for he is unable to grow and develop in his mindfulness and full awareness. Mindfulness and full awareness, remember, sati and sampajanya. Well, what's the difference? Oftentimes somebody, might ask. They're part of the same thing. So they're like the front and back of the same coin. You can think of it like that. You cannot have full awareness without sati. You cannot be practicing full mindfulness without having sampajanya. Because as you're moving through time and space, you're moving your hand, you're brushing your hair, you're checking your phone. That requires full awareness. That's sampajanya. But how am I able to apply full awareness if there's no sati? It's not going to happen. So sati is the spark. You can think of it like that. That starts this blaze called sampajanya. And your life, your heart should be ablaze with these two. And that is what we call yoniso manasikara. So these two, to simplify more, if it works for you, you can think of sati and sampajanya as the crux of yoniso manasikara. Yoniso manasikara doesn't mean being absorbed in it, though. When you're feeling distracted, restless or something like that, or something unpleasant, you're having the mind go into the sensual object that you saw or heard. When you're giving it attention, it's no longer yoniso manasikara, it is ayoniso manasikara. It is something that you're not supposed to give attention to because you're leaking now. And because of that, because that means you're not guarding that sense door. You didn't guard it well, and now it's taken over the mind because now it's agitating the heart. You might have seen it. Yeah, but do you remember how it was like? Yeah, the way they looked at me. There was it was lovely. It was a lovely music. Oh, when what? Even when it's happening, that is where sati and sampajanya have to be standing guard. That's the point. That is it. It's like a castle you're protecting. You're the sentinel. You're protecting, you're the guard. You're not allowing them in. Lord Buddha gives, there's another sutta, it's called the fortress, the king's, it's on the list of suttas, I think. If I don't think I've done it with you yet, but I will. The king's frontier fortress. He says, Lord Buddha gives the example of analogy, or again, simile. And he says, imagine there's only one gate for the whole entire castle. And there's some openings, for soldiers to shoot arrows from and to pour, defense strategies and things to marauding enemies and things. But there isn't a hole big enough for even a cat to go through. Lord Buddha uses this. Not even a cat could go through this. So all the holes and crevasses and things, openings are simply small, too small for even a cat. So, but there's one opening, and that's the gate, and that is where the gatekeeper sits. And he knows everybody in the castle. Whoever goes in, he knows as a friend. Whoever doesn't come in, he has seen and identified as an enemy or somebody who is foreign. He doesn't know. He needs to check their paper. Can we be that way with our six sense doors? You keep guard. That's what Sangvara is. Remember, Sangvega and Sangvara. I'm talking about something else now. The restraint is so important. Restraint of the six sense doors. And don't say, no, I got this. I can be looking at something provocative. I can taste something provocative, or I can listen to something. I'm okay. I have control over this. No. Lord Buddha doesn't say that. He calls that a stupid bhikkhu, in fact. Even if you're an arahant, why would you go ahead and flaunt like yourself like that? We're not supposed to, as bhikkhus, even if you are highly evolved in your jhana, unless there's a purpose for it, Dhammic purpose. But we never go ahead and, people read stories about, let's say, certain bhikkhus, forest-dwelling monks, who used to encounter elephants and tigers and things. But Lord Buddha, in the Sangha, we're against that. But then you had some bhikkhus who've seen an elephant, they say, well, yeah, let me go ahead and practice my metta on this. And there was one bhikkhu, a Westerner, that basically ended up being stomped over by an elephant, where his pelvis broke. And this is from the information that I read on how it happened. He was there on the floor in the forest for at least a day. He crawled somewhere where they found him. And for the rest of his life, he suffered because his height now was reduced because the pelvis, I guess, the bone fused or something. But basically, he put himself in harm's way without wisdom, simply to practice metta, to see how powerful. That's stupid. That's against the Dhamma. So we're never, challenging life. That is already challenging. Life itself is challenging enough. Now that's different than a person who is a bhikkhu who's walking and there's like a herd of elephants, a caravan of elephants, or one big bull elephant coming at you, or threatening or motioning, or a tiger. So you don't walk into a cobra pit to prove your faith. So, and remember, these were the two wrong examples, not to emulate the talentless chef and then the unintuitive or stupid bhikkhu. Now Lord Buddha is going to give us, because he says that bhikkhu has no clue as to what is taking place, nor does he get the hint. On the other hand, bhikkhus, imagine there was a rather talented kitchen chef who, while being intuitive, skilled, competent, and dedicated in his craft, decided to prepare a meal for the king or his royal minister by cooking a spread of a variety of curries. Thus, with his vast knowledge and expertise, he prepares a variety of dishes that are perfectly orchestrated, with just the right quantity of spices and seasonings in them. Not too much, not too little. Sounds familiar? This path is called Majjhima Pada. Majjhima. Majjhima means the middle path. Pada means path. Being well balanced in their flavor, thus, they came out perfect in their sour taste, their bitterness, their spicy and pungent flavor, their sweet and salty taste, being both appetizing and delicious. By the way, in the Western cuisine, bitter taste is always looked down upon. Well, even in Asia too, especially nowadays, But traditionally, shall we say, bitter taste is cooling, especially in the hot season. And it has medicinal values. I know when I was studying years ago Ayurveda, the bitter tasting vegetables or fruits have their own place. But again, the taste buds of the average person will not you know, we don't grow into liking them. But that's why when you read this, it's like, why would the king want to eat something bitter? Well, there's a reason. So now Lord Buddha continues. Now that kitchen chef, being talented, intuitive, skilled, competent, and dedicated, is quite interested in the outcome of his work. Invested, driven. And thus he carefully looks at the king's behavior at the table, very observant. For he is curious about his expressions while eating, the king's expressions. And thus he keeps getting the hint from his master's body language as he sits there tasting the dishes he had prepared. He observes to see as to which curry dish the king reached for more, as well as those he did not care much about and those he totally avoided. Thus he keeps gathering clues as to which dish received praises and which ones did not, as a result of which he concludes while considering, today, this curry dish was pleasing to my master, or he reached for this one, or kept reaching for that one over there, or he kept complimenting me on this dish here, or the sour curry pleased my master today, or he reached for the spicy dishes more, or he took a lot of the sweet tasting one, or he spoke in praise of the bitter one, or the bland curry, or the pungent curry, or the sweet curry, or the salty curry, or the mild curry, or the bitter curry, or I see my master is more pleased with these kinds of sauces and curries more than the others. Therefore, because of his concern and attention, that talented, intuitive, skilled, competent, and dedicated kitchen chef does obtain many special gifts from his master, be it as gifts of money, clothing, promotions, and all kinds of perks and bonuses received from the king's court. This does happen. Because if the person is, you're satiating their hunger, you're like their mother at that point. You've fed them, especially if it's something that's appetizing and pleasing to the eyes. So all these factors are the result of, it didn't happen in a vacuum. Remember, Lord Buddha doesn't tell us as to what, he just says talented, intuitive, skilled, with expertise type of a kitchen chef. Where do these qualities come from? From previous times where he has done a lot of this already. How did he know which ones people will like, which ones they wouldn't? Observation skills. Observation is key, which is lacking today in today's culture. When I would work in the past as a therapist, most of whatever I thought was going on before beginning a session with a new patient, I would toss those things out because the patient just gave me something that was highly unanticipated. It was not even in the charts. It was not even in the previous notes from other therapists. I saw something there. How would I see it though if I'm not observant? Meaning if I didn't have sati. And suddenly the patient would say, how did you know that? Nobody's ever I never told anyone. It's not in the notes. But I say, I saw something there happen. I dug in and you gave me more and I observed you more and I said no, I challenged you. How? You have to be present. That's why love is lacking in today's society. Not just flavorful food. Authenticity is missing. We have to call things out, and that requires courage, starting from ourselves. And that's what Lord Buddha is saying. And what is the reason for this? It is because that talented, intuitive, skilled, competent, and dedicated kitchen chef is quite interested in the behavior of his master as he closely observes the king's body language during the meal. Thus, he keeps gathering many clues as to what is taking place and how to proceed in the future. And therefore, he is one who does get the hint. Does get the hint. In just the same manner, bhikkhus, the intuitive, skilled, competent, and dedicated bhikkhu, in trying to meditate by being fully attentive and aware of the body, enthusiastically stays with it while observing whatever he detects as the most pronounced bodily sensation that is occurring at the time. He does this, but without having any thoughts or attitudes of either longing or resentment towards the world. Now, as he does so, he maintains his resolve while carefully navigating through the mental hindrances along the way. He doesn't say, you hindrances, pancha nivarana, those obstacles. Nivarana means hindrance. The things that are also could be our teachers if we know how to navigate them. Restlessness is one. Sensual desire is one. Hatred, anger, ill will is another one. I don't like this. That's one hindrance right there. Sloth, being drowsy, procrastinating, delaying, not putting in the right effort, the amount of effort, not taking initiative. They're all part of the hindrances. Doubt is the big one. Worry, remorse, beating yourself down again and again, saying, how could I'm not practicing, I'm a terrible student. All this, part of the hindrance. So you use that as your object instead of, no, I'm supposed to be on the breath. I'm supposed to be on the breath. Why is this restlessness coming in and messing the whole picture for me? No, observe, see the hindrance for what it is. Look at it. Don't deny its existence. It's there. Don't put a lid on it, suppressing it away somehow, making it disappear. There is no like Harry Potter invisibility cloak to put on any of this. Because there's no learning, you're going to stay ignorant otherwise. And there's no growth out of ignorance as such. Navigating through the mental hindrances along the way, thus he is able to enter into samadhi because there's understanding. He is then able to even eradicate the defilements that are responsible for corrupting the heart. This because he is interested to look at the very behavior of his mind. Thus, he keeps getting clues as to what is taking place and how to proceed next. And therefore, he is one who does get the hint. A wise person is a person who gets the hint. In fact, he got the hint, that's why he's wise, or she's wise. Because you had so many bhikkhus and bhikkhunis at the time of Lord Buddha, some of whom had been there for years. And then you have a newly ordained bhikkhuni showing up, and then within a few days, she becomes an arahant. So now she has to put up with all the jealousy and antagonism and persecution of the other bhikkhunis. Why? Because they put in the time, they put in the years, and who are you coming into the block all of a sudden? Well, there's a difference. She got the hint. They didn't. Also, such a bhikkhu, in trying to meditate by being fully attentive and aware of feelings, enthusiastically stays with them, while observing whatever he detects as the most pronounced feeling that is occurring at the time. He does this, but without having any thoughts or attitudes of either longing or resentment towards the world. Again, he's not fighting with the world or pulling the world in. Now, as he does so, he maintains his resolve while carefully navigating through the mental hindrances along the way. So the same formula is being repeated here. He is able to enter into samadhi because he worked with the hindrances. He doesn't see them as something to continuously engage with. That's one extreme. He doesn't see them as something to run away from because you will never be able to. He is then able to even eradicate the defilements that are responsible for corrupting the heart. This because he is interested to look at the very behavior of his mind. Thus, he keeps getting clues as to what is taking place and how to proceed next. And therefore, he is one who does get the hint. Also, such a bhikkhu, in trying to meditate by being fully attentive and aware of whatever state that is manifesting within the the heart, chittanupassana now, enthusiastically stays with it. That's key. You must be invested in the thing that you're doing. in order for it to work, and not look at it as a chore. I have to do this. That's why most retreats are actual failures when they're done with this attitude. While enthusiast stays with it while observing whatever he detects as the most pronounced state that is occurring in the chitta at the time. He does this, but without having any thoughts or attitudes of either longing or resentment towards the world. Now, as he does so, he maintains his resolve while carefully navigating through the mental hindrances along the way. Thus, he is able to enter into samadhi. He is then able to even eradicate the defilements that are responsible for corrupting the heart. This because he is interested to look at the very behavior of the mind. Thus, he keeps getting clues as to what is taking place and how to proceed next. And therefore, he is one who does get the hint. Do you see now why I was saying the consistency, the role of repetition? Do you see how important it is? If it was important enough for Lord Buddha, it is. It better be important for us. That's why no sutta that is being translated in English or any other language, including Pali, needs to have those dreaded ellipses. They're disgusting. They're appalling. They need to be put, the whole sutta, the whole repetition portion is needed to be there. That's how the opera singer is able to hit that high E note, or have a sound that people could listen to. Or you can actually build or lay bricks, build a foundation to a building. That's how you can write a letter today. Why? Because of that repetition. You heard so many times your teacher and you along memorizing, saying. Same thing here. So please don't run away from this kind of work. Also, such a bhikkhu, in trying to meditate by being fully attentive and aware of mental objects, dhammanupassana, he witnesses as they occur, enthusiastically stays with them while observing whatever he detects as the most pronounced mental phenomenon that is occurring at the time. Remember, 5 hindrances are part of the dhammanupassana, or the 5 aggregates, you name it, or even the 4 noble truths. You could use those, or the 7 factors of awakening, to name a few. He does this, but without having any thoughts or attitudes of either longing or resentment towards the world. Now, as he does so, he maintains his resolve while carefully navigating through the mental hindrances along the way. You will find these hindrances. They are helpful. If you're climbing a mountain and you see this ledge, you can look at the ledge, this rock protruding out, sticking out, jutting out from the face of this wall. You can see it either as an obstacle or as a stepping stone for you to go higher. Instead of looking, one more rock I have to navigate, that's one way. People for millennia have been navigating the oceans with the help of the wind. How they navigate, that's why they developed technologies of how to use sails, how to turn the mast, how to turn it in such a way where they could still use the wind, even if it's not to their liking. At least they can lower the sail. Otherwise, it will just allow them to fly, glide over the surface of the ocean and get to their destination a lot quicker. So the sooner you learn how to navigate through and use the hindrances, the nivarana, pancha nivarana, properly, more efficiently, the deeper you're going to go, the quicker you're going to go into samadhi. And samadhi is the key that allows us to enter into Nibbana. It allows us to gain wisdom. He is then able to eradicate the defilements that are responsible for corrupting the heart. This because he is interested to look at the very behavior of his mind. Thus, he keeps getting clues as to what is taking place and how to proceed next. And therefore, he is one who does get the hint. In this manner, that intuitive, skilled, competent, and dedicated bhikkhu is then able to, here in this very life, enter into and dwell in numerous happy and soothing states of being. For he constantly grows and develops in his mindfulness and full awareness. And what is the reason for this? It is because that intuitive, skilled, competent, and dedicated bhikkhu is always curiously interested to look at the very behavior of his mind. Thus, he keeps getting clues as to what is taking place and how to proceed next. And therefore, he is one who does get the hint. Sad, sad, sad. So let us get the hint. It's all about being present. This is the essence of what I understand as being present. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Be here now, those 60s, 50s, 70s, those bumper stickers. Be here now. I remember in the 90s, when I was studying at the College of Buddhist Studies, the president and the vice president, they were like, we were wanting to get some funding in, some type of income, basically, generate income. And they found a place that would print T-shirts and sweaters. And they said, what should we have on it? We can have a Dhamma Chakka, Dhamma wheel, this and that. And I said, what if I actually draw something? And so I painted with ink the painting of Dhammo or Bodhidharma from the Mahayana. And next to it, they said, we have to write something. What should we write? So I said, what about we write, be here now? And it stuck. So later on, I found out that others had also been using it, I guess from the 70s. I'm not sure. But basically, after that, I've been seeing a lot. So when I said be here now, my mind went there to my earliest days in studying the Dhamma with my first teacher, Bhante Ratnasara. But basically, it's just a meaningless term. Be here now. A killer is very much in the moment. People at Davos right now, the elite, are there trying to dictate what will happen for our future on this planet, dictating what we should do, what should we eat, what to be getting injected in. They decide, and we just follow. They're very much present in how they're saying what they're saying. A thief is very present, including that intuitive chef. He was very much present when he was putting in big dollop of this into that, a big chunk of this spice in there without thinking. He was very much present, but he didn't know. So there was no skillfulness. So being present has everything to do with getting the hint, being present. This behavior that I have, this word that I just said to you, this gesture I made, and you saw it, how did it land for you? I need to see that in your behavior. I need to look for that. The echoing of it. How was it? Now, if you were smiling, suddenly you become somber and your facial features change. Something happened. I need to inquire about that. I need to ask. So the body is already giving you a lot of clues. This is not about another person here now, I'm mentioning. This is about the practice of satipatthana. That's what Lord Buddha was talking through and through about. What the practitioner, the meditator is doing is not listening to their body. They are not observing what's going on. If I am drowsy in my meditation, if I'm always falling, and there's no reason, let's say, it's not too early in the morning, and I've eaten well and I've rested, so what's happening? Obviously, it means I am basically not invested enough, or there's too much sluggishness in my attitude, or I'm resisting. But it shows in the body, it demonstrates, manifests in the body. Unfortunately, if the mind is not developed to have sati, to look at these things carefully, in that sense, critically, honestly, then you would not know. 40 years would pass and you're still doing the same things. I've met meditators over the years with a lot more years than I have put into meditation. And you look and there's no sila, there's definitely no samadhi, and there's definitely no wisdom. So where did those years go? I don't know, but definitely it's not showing in their behavior. Here's an example of an unintuitive kitchen chef who was not paying attention. So do pay attention. If you're frustrated after your meditation, during the meditation, you finish the meditation and you say, oof, done. Guess what? There's a problem. You need to get the hint that you were forcing yourself through it. And that's why you could not have possibly gone into samadhi. If you think you did, you're lying to yourself. The mind will trick you. But if you are during and after, there's so much quiet that's walking with you. You're taking your quiet with you without even knowing that it's there. There's a certain serenity, even in your voice. You're having a difficulty to verbalize your thoughts, even to think. The phone rings, you want to pick it up, but you're just like, I don't want to speak to anyone. What happened? That is the essence of nikkamma. You're spiraling your way down into the serene state of seclusion. And it's safe there. Okay. That's different. So that's also a hint you can take. Okay, so the voice changes. And you check the quality of your mind. And you see there's more gaps between thoughts. Or there's quiet. You think something's wrong. Why? There's no thoughts. Or not as many thoughts. And the old proclivities or sankharas come in and they say, we got to fix this. We got to fix this. We don't have to, wait a minute. Why are we fixing anything? There's quiet. This is good. Really? Yes. Yeah. I need you to get acclimated to this. This is where we're headed. More and more of this. That's why wisdom has to be developed and consciousness must be understood. So I will stop here and see if there are any questions. There's no questions. Okay. All right. So let us transfer some merit. Akasatha chabumata devana gamahitika punyantang anumuditva chirang rakkantu lokasasanam. Akasatha chabumata devatika punyantang anumuditva chirang rakkantu desanam. Akasatha chabo mata deva nagamahidika punyantangan ditva chirang rakhantu paranti. Sa, sa, sa. May you be well. May all those of you who celebrate the lunar calendar year, often called Chinese New Year, Happy New Year, Year of the Dragon. I don't know which one it is though. Is it golden? And I know Year of the Dog has the metal dog, wooden dog. I don't know about the dragon, but whichever one it is, dragon is also a symbol of resiliency, wisdom, among others. I'm sure you know better than I do. But may it be a year of kindness, um, wisdom, serenity of the heart. May it be a deepening of your samadhi. Diteva dhamme, in this very birth. May you be strong in your resolution. May you be extremely curious as to why you're practicing and go deeper and with your honest approach. May the Triple Gems blessings be with you and all your loved ones. Until next time, Sukhi Hota. You're welcome.